The reality is that even those of us who are in a local environment are having to work globally. None of us is exempt from really being part of the global workforce these days. We always are going to encounter people who are different from us. We're going to have to lead or work with people who are different from us. And this is something that we all need to be prepared for. And one of the challenges for organizations is how can we prepare the workforce for this new reality? The first step for leaders is to really be prepared themselves. And I think a key part of this is, number one, to be aware of their own differences, their own uniqueness, their own identities, and the cultural implications of those identities. So the first part is really being aware of oneself. Once we're able to understand ourselves well and really understand the kinds of differences that we might encounter and some of the ways to do that well, we also need to be able to work across those differences in an everyday kind of way. We need to be able to really learn not only what those differences are, but what are some of the ways that we can effectively decenter ourselves, not make our own preferences and our own ways of being and our own styles the natural or normal way, but understand that many people will have other ways to do things. And so we need to develop the skills to do that. For leaders, managers, people who create, who are in a sense developing the workforce, we need to create the context where we can continually develop those skills and allow ways for people to handle differences that they might not have expected. So that's a very important piece of it as well, is the ongoing learning is really a critical skill and opportunity in terms of working in a global workforce. We're often asked whether it's important to know different languages and how important that is in being able to work effectively across differences, across international differences, and certainly being multilingual is an important skill. To the extent that we know other languages beside English, that's going to help us really bridge those boundaries in a more effective way. But language is really not enough. We really need to understand cultural values, we need to understand styles, we need to understand many other nuances of interactions that are really embedded in language, but that we don't necessarily learn when we learn words or sentences or how to communicate in another language. We need much more embeddedness in the culture that is the basis for the language. So learning another language is not equivalent to really having cross-cultural competency and being able to really work effectively in a global context. It may not really be sufficient to memorize a bunch of rules about a different country. That may be helpful to give us some ideas about what might go on there, but those cultural rule books are really insufficient. We really need to do a lot more than that. We really need to work on ourselves to be flexible, to be able to deal with paradox, to be able to deal with difference in an ongoing way. Because the reality is the country we're going to be going to is not just one way. Everybody there is not just one way. They're going to have their own differences. And so dealing with diversity will be a very important skill, not only where we are now, but when we go to a different country. And so that involves being able to really get to the bottom of things, not to rush to judgment, to really separate the meaning and interpretation we give to events from the actual experience or the data that we are observing. I think that's a very important skill, is really understanding how we reach judgments. And that's particularly important when we're working cross-culturally, because the meanings that we're used to giving to situations are going to be very different in a new environment. Well, I think letting go a little bit is a key skill in working in the global workforce. I think that ultimately working globally is really a wonderful opportunity for us individually, for us collectively in our organizations, and really for the world. It gives us really a chance to probably solve problems in some new ways and to ultimately make a better world for all of us. So I think if we can meet the challenges, I think we're all going to be richer for it.